Hi guys, welcome back to Sacred Vedic Astrology. My name is Samantha. I'm a professional Vedic sidereal astrologer. So today is 11/11, which I hope you guys are manifesting, tapping into some mysticism, tapping into some magic if you can. And we are going to do a really fun chart analysis today. So we are going to go into one of the most famous prophets of our lifetime, one of the most psychic, prophetic people who existed. We're going to look at Edgar Cayce's Vedic astrology chart. So Edgar Cayce was known as the sleeping prophet. He would go into these trance states and he would pull out psychic information and he would tell his clients how to heal themselves, and he would pull out all these really, wild ideas and thoughts that he wasn't, conscious and aware of, but he would go into these states and just channel all this information. And he actually said in a trance state once that Western tropical astrology was one sign off in calculation. So what he was referencing was that Vedic sidereal astrology is actually much more astronomically correct in astrology. And so he was, essentially channeling this idea that Vedic sidereal astrology is a lot more accurate, which, as someone who spent 10 years of my life studying Western tropical astrology, I can fully agree with that statement and tell you that if you want to predict, if you want to be a accurate predictive astrologer, Vedic sidereal all the way, baby. All right, so let's get into analysis of Edgar Cayce's Vedic sidereal astrology chart, how we can see that he was going to be a popular, prominent, prophetic, psychic figure in his lifetime, how we can see that very clearly, very strongly in the chart, and also how we can see fame and notoriety in this field as well too, right? Because it's one thing to have the chart of a psychic and a mystic and, someone who can do those things. That's one thing, right? It's another thing to have the chart of someone who can be famous for doing those things. And he actually had both, okay? So we're going to go into chart analysis. As always, I'm going to pull up the chart so you guys can follow along and hopefully learn a lot about Vedic astrology today. All right, so let's get right into it. All right, guys, so here's Edgar Cayce's Vedic astrology chart. I love his chart so much. It honestly gives me chills when things are this accurate and spot on in Vedic astrology. It truly does give me like full body chills. All right, so let's get into analysis. And as always, we're going to start with his first house, okay? I feel like I've been doing a lot of chart analysis recently where people just happen to be Cancer Lagna or Cancer Ascendant. So that's an interesting theme that is coming up. Perhaps a lot of famous people will have this ascendant because it is ruled by the moon, and the moon is indication of the masses and the public. So that's a theory that's still in the works, okay? Don't hold me to it yet until I go into more work on this theory, but let's get started. Okay, so Edgar Cayce has a Cancer ascendant, okay, first house. So Cancer is ruled by the moon, so we're always going to hop over to the moon sign to see where that is sitting, to see where the first house lord gets disposited, okay? So we have this moon in Aries in the Bharani Nakshatra in the 10th house, okay? So first house lord goes into the 10th house, which means that his whole chart is getting ruled by his career and his public image, okay? It's also getting ruled by the 10th house Moon-Neptune conjunction. So we have the first house lord go into the 10th, which means that this is a career-heavy lifetime for Edgar Cayce, right? First house lord in the 10th house will show that someone is really here to build that prominent career. They're here to really have that bigger, larger than life career. And the moon is there, which is fame and the masses and intuition as well too in the psychic, right? So first house lord in the 10th house moon in itself is a classic fame placement in Vedic astrology, okay? You will see many charts of famous, well-known people have that moon in the 10th house. Why? Because the moon is the masses and the public. 10th house is public recognition and career. So if you have the moon, the planet of the masses and the public, sitting in the house of career, best believe someone is going to be well known for what they're doing in this lifetime. I remember my Vedic astrology teacher, Joni, would always tell me that, if someone has moon in the 10th house, They are just well known for whatever they do. So if they're a plumber, they're the best plumber. You know, if they are a seamstress, they're the best seamstress, and they're well known for their work in some regard. If you have Moon Neptune in the 10th house and you're a psychic, guess what? You're the best psychic and you're one of the most popular psychics. That's Moon conjunct Neptune in the 10th house. First house Lord in the 10th house, best believe it. Okay. So Moon rules our intuition and the subconscious, okay? Neptune rules the psychic, the intuitive, and things that are sort of dreamlike or elusive or illusionary in some way. So Moon-Neptune conjunction, it's about an 8-degree orb of conjunction, so it's not necessarily the tightest conjunction that we've ever seen, right? But you're still going to absolutely feel that planetary energy when Moon comes together with Neptune in the 10th house. So what does that mean? That means that his whole career, his whole public image was based on him going into subconscious states and pulling out intuition and psychic information. Yes, that's quite literally what that means, okay? Neptune is there conjuncting the Moon. That's a classic psychic placement. Sits in the 10th house of the career and the public image. All right? So we see right there, you know, it's clear as can be that this is a chart where someone has a big career, a public image that's connected to channeling, to the psychic, to the spiritual, to the intuitive, and going into subconscious states to access that information. That's Moon-Neptune conjunction in the 10th house, first house Lord in the 10th house as well too. All right, and then let's see what disposits that 10th house, right? So 10th house Lord, it's ruled by Aries, which means that it's going to rule the 6th house. So 10th house Lord in the 6th, let's hop over to the 6th house. We see that Jupiter is the 6th house of Sagittarius, right? Jupiter is in its own sign in the 6th house. So 10th house Lord in the 6th, and we see Jupiter, the great benefic, in its own sign in the 6th house. What does the 6th house rule? 6th house rules health, healing, wellness, anything that has to do with helping and healing people in this lifetime. So not only do we have first house Lord in the 10th, Moon, benefic, you know, masses fame in the 10th house, conjuncting Neptune, the psychic, the intuitive, the spiritual, the subconscious in the 10th house. Then we follow the next dispositor, 10th house Lord in the 6th house with Jupiter, the great benefic, in its own sign in the 6th house, okay? So Jupiter is really, really powerful in that 6th house. Powerful for what? Powerful for a career in healing and working with the masses because of that Moon in the 10th disposited by the 6th house with Jupiter sitting there. All right, really, really powerful chart for healing and helping people and working in the exact fields that he did absolutely work in, right? That's that 10th house Lord in the 6th house. Jupiter in its own sign, a great benefic, okay? And then we have Mars in conjunction there. So Jupiter-Mars is a classic philosophical conjunction where someone is very interested in different ideologies, different beliefs, different philosophies, and they're really going to be interested and motivated to study all sorts of different philosophical knowledge. If they are opposing each other, so if Mars is opposite Jupiter, someone will have issues with other people's ideals and ideologies and philosophies, but if they're conjuncting, someone is going to be very interested in all those themes throughout their life. Okay, so we see that Jupiter-Mars conjunction, Jupiter in its own sign in the 6th house, so a benefic planet, and then we see Mars, which is, yes, a malefic, but Mars is conjuncting a benefic in its own sign, and actually, you know, malefic planets in Vedic astrology do well in the Upachaya houses because when malefics go into Upachaya houses, they do better over time. So we actually like to see malefics in Upachaya houses, right? So we're seeing that malefic energy goes into the 6th house in Upachaya house and it's conjuncting Jupiter in its own sign in the 6th. So a novice Vedic astrologer might look at that and think, oh, you know, Mars with Jupiter in the 6th, it's giving mixed results, but it's not because malefics do well in Upachaya and it's in conjunction with Jupiter in its own sign of Sagittarius. So this is a really powerful 6th house, and 10th house Lord is disposited by a powerful 6th house. So first house Lord is strong because it's in the 10th house with Moon, okay? Moon's a great benefic. It's in the 10th house of public image and recognition. Let's follow the 10th house, go to the 6th house. We have a strong, strong sixth house because we have Jupiter in its own sign and it's in an Upachaya house with Mars sitting there. So it means that this house gets better as time goes on, right? Having one benefic in its own sign conjuncting a malefic in an Upachaya would be a really positive manifestation of that sixth house. Okay? And let us go over next, because this is so important. It's so, so important. Let's go over to Edgar Cayce's 8th house of Aquarius. All right, so let's hop over to the 8th house now. So 8th house, man. Okay, if you know anything about astrology, you're going to look at this 8th house and just instantaneously laugh, because you know that the 8th house rules psychics and mediums and channelers and, all those sort of things. And we can see 1, 2, 3, 4 planetary energies sitting in the house of psychic, occult, all of that sort of stuff, near-death experiences, best believe it. With the 8th house, I've met many people, guys, who have a really strong 8th house and have had near-death experiences, because 8th house rules the other side, it rules the psychic. And when those planets get triggered in dashas, I've also seen people have near-death experiences in those dasha sequences as well, too. But that's a video for another time. So we see Venus, the great benefic, in the 8th house of Aquarius. We see Saturn in its own sign in the 8th house, which is really strong as well, too. Then we see Mercury, the benefic, in the 8th house. And then we see Rahu in the 8th house as well, too. All right, so it's just so crazy. It's just so wild to me. Okay, so first of all, Saturn is in its own sign in Aquarius. So that means that we have a really powerful Saturn. Okay. It's hemmed in by 2 benefics. All right, so what does that mean? What does hemmed in by 2 benefics mean? It means that Saturn is sitting here at 20 degrees, Venus is above it at 23 degrees, Mercury is below it at 19 degrees. That's a really tight degree orb of conjunction. Rahu is at 18 degrees. We see Rahu, Mercury, Saturn, Venus all in this powerful 8th house because Saturn is in its own sign. And what you will find is that when a malefic, so is Saturn a malefic? Yes, but it's in its own sign and it's in conjunction with 2 benefics. So the 2 benefics are really kind of, weighing out this energy. So we see a really potent 8th house here. Saturn in the 8th. Saturn, I've often found, can key the career. So it's in the 8th house of the psychic, the mediumship, the channeling, all that sort of stuff. Venus is a benefic there in the 8th house. Mercury is there. Mercury rules education and communication and writing, right? So we see Mercury, Saturn in a very tight conjunction. When Mercury comes together with Saturn, people are really gifted with writing abilities, and he would write and channel all the time about, things beyond this world. That is Mercury, Saturn conjunct in the 8th house with Venus and Rahu as well, too. So Rahu and Mercury conjunct in about a 1 degree orb of conjunction in the Shatabhishak Nakshatra. Okay, this is important. This is very, very important because Rahu with Mercury in itself will show someone that is really interested in learning and knowledge and education, and they can get obsessive about, constantly learning and taking new things in. And it's in that 8th house of the psychic, the occult, the metaphysical, and that's a very healing house as well, too. And then Shatabhishak Nakshatra means the hands of 100 healers. So when we see this nakshatra, people will really connect with healing and doing some sort of healing profession in this lifetime. I always remember I had a client and her chart was really split 2 ways, okay? And when I see charts like that, I start going into nakshatras because I've found a lot of the times if you really hone in on nakshatras, you can find a lot of the answers to charts that might be a little bit more confusing. Maybe they go 2 directions. And I remember I was analyzing her chart and she had Shatabhishak Nakshatra all over. It was Shatabhishak, Shatabhishak, Shatabhishak. And I was okay, so is she a nurse? Is she a healer? And when I was doing her session, I was are you a nurse or a healer? And she was yeah, I've been a nurse for 10 years. So this nakshatra you will find connects to healing because it connects to 100 hands of healing, okay? So we're going to have a lot of healers. We're going to have a lot of people who work in healing professions and fields with that nakshatra, Shatabhishak, strong in their chart, okay? And then we see Saturn in its own sign. So this is a potent and powerful, powerful 8th house, okay? And Venus, Saturn, Mercury, Rahu. Rahu is what we're drawn to in this lifetime, kind of obsessively with a burning desire is how I find Rahu to manifest. And Rahu with all these planets are bringing all that planetary energy together into, what he's obsessive about. So he's obsessive, about learning and studying occult knowledge. He's obsessive about teaching occult knowledge, and he was very much so a teacher and a guide in this lifetime as well, too. So he was a healer, he was a teacher, and he was also a psychic and a prophet, right? And that's all that energy active in the 8th house. And another really interesting thing about that manifestation of the 8th house as well, too, is that essentially he had the near-death experience that led him into the psychic abilities, right? So near-death experience, going into the psychic, going into the occult would be 8th house energy through and through. That is what it is, okay? It's near-death experiences leading us into some sort of like psychic gifts or psychic talents of some kind, okay? So there, all of that is right there, and we are going to find that in opposition, all of these planets are also going directly opposite of K2, right? So we would see K2 aspecting that 8th house as well, too. So it's like a second 8th house axis, which means a lot of what he's learning about in this lifetime is the psychic, the occult, and how to tap into that with Rahu in the 8th. Okay, so we see a really, really strong 8th house. And we see a strong manifestation of Shatabishak Nakshatra, and then we see Rahu with Mercury, which shows that he's sort of a teacher of the occult and the metaphysical, as well with that tight degree orb of a conjunction. And see how all these planets are really tight in conjunction in the 8th house. So we really want to pay attention to degree orbs in Vedic astrology as well, too, because if we have like Venus with Mercury and they're in about a 4-degree orb conjunction, that's very different than if it's like a 17-degree orb conjunction. It manifests very differently. Okay, so we see that really strong Saturn in its own sign in the 8th house at 20 degrees in about a 1-degree orb of conjunction with Mercury, right? In about a 2-degree orb of conjunction with Rahu, in about a, let's say, 4-degree orb conjunction with Venus. So we are seeing so many planets packed into the 8th house of the psychic, of the occult, of the metaphysical, of the healing, of all of the stuff that he mastered in this lifetime. Okay? And we can also see that his Atmakarika is Venus. Okay, so there's two. So in Gemini astrology, we can also go into Karaka degree points and essentially pull out more information about the career and about the life as well, too. So we would go to the Atmakarika, which is the highest degree planet, and then we'll go to the AMK, which is the second highest degree planet, and get more information on someone's career. Okay, so Atmakarika is Venus. Lo and behold, it's in the 8th house of the psychic, the spiritual, the metaphysical. Okay. AMK, second highest degree planet, is Saturn. Lo and behold, Saturn is in its own sign of Aquarius in the 8th house of the psychic, of the medium, of the channeling, all that sort of stuff, right? So it's pretty, it's obvious. It's all very obvious in this chart. And that really strong Saturn is what makes this 8th house so strong, is the strong Saturn in its own sign in the 8th house, in between two benefics, in between Mercury, in between Venus, and in the Shatabishak Nakshatra, hands of 100 healers. All right, and let's also go over to K2, because K2 is also the spiritual and the metaphysical, and let's see where this is aspecting. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Of course, K2 is aspecting his 6th house. It's aspecting Jupiter. I have found that K2 Jupiter aspects will often show someone who can teach spirituality and teach spiritual topics, and they've sort of mastered the spiritual in past lives as well, too. So we see that K2 aspect in Jupiter by its 5th aspect. Let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Of course, K2 is also aspecting the moon and aspecting its 10th house. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. K2 moon is another really strong indication of a psychic, of a medium, of someone who channels psychic information, and it's also aspecting moon Neptune in the 10th house. So it's not only, us seeing that K2 is aspecting the moon, which is a psychic energy, it's aspecting moon in the 10th, which shows that his career takes on the energy of K2. So it takes on the energy of the psychic, the spiritual, the strange, the metaphysical in that aspect to the moon Neptune in the 10th house. Come on, guys, it gives me chills. Okay, and so then let's also go over to his D9 Navamsha real quick as well, too. So D9 Navamsha, his 10th house, we have Moon Ketu, psychic, psychic intuition in the 10th. And we also see that his 10th house lord is in the 4th house with Mercury sitting there. So again, he's like a spiritual psychic teacher and medium as well too. Okay. So we also see in his D9 Navamsha, we have a Chandra Mangal yoga. So we see that Moon conjuncts Mars, conjuncts Ketu in the 10th house. And that will show someone who is really meant to work in like spiritual, metaphysical with Moon Ketu. And then we see that Mars, which creates the Chandra Mangal yoga, which also shows that someone is working in the spiritual, the metaphysical, but doing so with business and having business success, right? So we see that all very literal manifestation of everything that he did and achieved and acquired in this lifetime. It's all very obvious. It's all very clear. We can see essentially everything right there as well too. So I thought this would be fun. Let's pull up his D10 chart as well too and just see what's going on there. I actually have not checked this out before. Okay, let's see his 10th house and his D10, 10th house lord in the 2nd. Venus in the 2nd. So his 10th house lord in the 2nd would show that he's meant to speak and communicate and teach in his career. Okay, and then we see Venus, the great benefic, in his 10th house lord in the 2nd with Venus sitting there as well too. So we are going to find when someone has like 10th house, 2nd house connections, they channel, they speak a lot, and there's something really important about their speech in their career as well too. All right, so it's all right there. It's all very obvious. It's all very literal. I always tell people Vedic astrology is very literal. It's not this, science of interpretation and, you're not taking your own meanings with it. You are learning how Vedic astrology works as a science, and then you are plugging in different aspects into everyone's chart and following the science of Jyotisha, which is also known as the science or the Lord of Light. So it's really a science. It's truly a science, and that's how they see it in India. All right, and something else that I just noticed, I want to bring this up as well too, is his 10th house lord is in the 6th house, and then his 9th house lord is in the 6th house, and his sun is in the 9th in Pisces as well too. So he has a lot of 9th house energy active, and the 9th house is the house of philosophy and, the spiritual and the metaphysical. So we see a powerful 9th house, we see a powerful 6th house, and we see a really, really powerful and potent 8th house. And then we see Moon, Neptune, the 10th. So these are all houses that we are looking for a psychic, for a medium, and someone who can do these things professionally as well too. This isn't just the chart of someone who is doing psychic work for fun. This is the chart of someone who is channeling and doing psychic work and making a really big name out of them, for themselves through it as well too. All right, and one last note, actually, is we see his moon in the 10th house in Bharani Nakshatra. So Bharani is all about breaking through and breaking, free from something, some sort of societal convention or some sort of societal norms whenever we see the Bharani Nakshatra potent in someone's chart. And if you see Bharani, someone is going to be the first to do something. They're going to be really non-conventional in their career because Bharani is in that 10th house with the moon. So we can see his career was non-conventional, it was pushing boundaries, and it was all in connection to the psychic and the spiritual as well too. So I love to see those literal manifestations of nakshatras as well too. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed, but most of all, I hope you guys learned a lot about Vedic astrology through this chart analysis, and hope it brought some sort of clarity into how to see a psychic, a channeler, a teacher in Vedic astrology, right? That's a very powerful manifestation with that really strong 8th house, that Moon Neptune psychic in the 10th house of career, 1st house lord in the 10th house, 10th house lord in the 6th house, Jupiter, great benefic, in its own sign in the 6th in an Upachaya house with one malefic in an Upachaya, and the Atmakarika and the AMK, the 2nd degree highest planet, is also all in the 8th house. So we see further indications of the strength of the 8th house in this chart. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed, and comment down below as well to see if you guys have any future videos that you guys want me to go into more chart analysis with as well too. I always have so much fun doing these, and I love making these for you guys, and I hope you guys have such a beautiful, blessed 11/11, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye!